Hey everybody, Dave Neal here, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Recap, a guy's review. As you can see from the title, Ben Higgins has a new book out, and I'm going to read 12 excerpts from this book. Pretty fascinating stuff. He talks about breaking up with Lauren over the phone, hiding from her in New York City, an addiction he had to battle, and also what it was like on Caitlin Bristow's season. And at the very end of these 12 excerpts, I'm also going to include why he thought it was important for Lauren Bushnell to sign off on the book and her thoughts when she read the book. So we'll get into all that. The book is called Alone in Plain Sight, Searching for Connection When You're Seen But Not Known. As soon as I read the title of the book, it reminded me of the Derek Zoolander School for Kids Who Can't Read Good and Want to Do Other Stuff Good Too. They have about the same amount of letters in both titles. It's a long one, folks. Type it in. All right, let's get into these excerpts here and leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think. I think Ben, if we can sum anything up about him, is that he was a good guy, not too dramatic, you know? He's just a hoodie and jeans white dude. What do you want from the guy? He wears his hat on backwards. He puts his pants on one leg at a time. You know what I mean? Maybe not great for Bachelor drama, but, the guy's just looking for happiness. Aren't we all, folks? All right, let's get into it. 12 excerpts from his new book. If you want to purchase this book, I'll put a link in the description. You guys can go find it wherever it is you find books. All right, bookstores. Ever heard of them? All right, number one. Several years ago, I went through a period of about 4 months where I was completely disconnected from everyone, he wrote on his dependency on painkillers. I could barely get out of bed, much less interact with others. I wasn't just depressed. I was ashamed. I'd made a huge mess, not only of my life, but of the lives of others. I felt so bad that I retreated deep inside myself because I was afraid I was going to hurt somebody again. I didn't trust myself. I didn't like myself, let alone love myself. So this is what went wrong for Ben and Lauren. I went through a very painful breakup that left me hurting and confused and wondering if I just needed to take a break from dating for a while, maybe even forever, Ben wrote of his split with Lauren, adding their painful separation didn't happen overnight. Ben went on to reveal mistrust was the first crack in their relationship, which had a lot to do with what happened on the show. Likely that infamous decision to tell two women, Lauren and JoJo Fletcher, that he loved them. Yeah, you tell two different women you love them. That is a crack of mistrust, I would say. Hard to overcome that. A couple of dozen roses isn't going to get you over the fact every time you fight where the lady's like, oh yeah, why don't you just go back to JoJo then? You said you loved her. It's like, well, I wish I could have not done that. He said, we didn't watch any of the episodes when they aired, but we didn't have to. Everywhere we went, people asked about what they'd watched on that week's episode. The questions were not healthy for us. Even without the questions, we wouldn't have made it. Interesting. So it's kind of nice when you say, like, look, even if they weren't asking these questions, it wasn't meant to be. That's kind of good to know, because you don't want to look back and go, oh, if we just avoided this, X, Y, and Z would have happened. You don't need to know all that. After leaving the fantasy bubble the show provided, the couple started to realize that this perfect fit wasn't nearly as perfect as we once believed. We had to work very hard at even the basics of our relationship. At times, we had trouble talking. That's interesting. And as we know from the recent, Dale and Claire, they couldn't even make it, a couple months. Once you get out of the little bubble that they set up, the little cushy world, you start to deal with real life things, you know what I mean? And then you got to deal with each other, like Colton said in his book, that he's, they didn't like the fact he was eating too much peanut butter. It's always something small, right? And the little things add up. That foreboding question mark. While viewers were so enamored with Ben and Lauren after their fairy tale ending on The Bachelor that they landed their own free-form spinoff, producers clearly could see the writing on the wall when it came time to name the short-lived series Ben and Lauren, Happily Ever After, ? What lasted longer, the free-form, the network, or the show Ben and Lauren, Happily Ever After? He said the producers added the question mark because they sensed there was trouble in paradise. By the time Happily Ever After came along, there wasn't a lot of joy left in our relationship. Tension and pain had taken its place. Neither of us were happy, but we were still doing our best to make the relationship work. We went to couples therapy and counseling, yet no matter how many steps forward we took, it seemed something would hit us and we'd be right back to confusion and doubt. If there's anything good about these memoirs, these tell-alls afterwards, it's to just realize, look, they're like all of us. We all do this in our 20s, 30s, 40s. We go through relationships. We learn about ourselves. We see what we love in somebody. We see what somebody lacks. We see what we lack. We see what you know what I mean? The phone call. Ultimately, the decision to end their engagement wasn't made in person. By the end, we were barely speaking. The breakup itself came over the phone. If you wonder how you can end an engagement with a phone call, believe me when I say that both of us preferred it that way. Neither of us needed another tortured face-to-face conversation about our relationship. The decision to call it quits over the phone felt far healthier for both parties, Ben explained. I was on the way to New York with my boss when Lauren and I had a brief conversation in which we agreed she would move while I was gone. It was the best possible solution for both of us. I think we were both so beat up emotionally that we were just glad the whole thing was done. Is moving the worst part of a breakup when you got to get your things out of someone else's apartment? There should be a moving company called like Breakups, the Breakup Bros, and they just show up and they just get everything. You like put a little sticker on everything you want them to take and they just come, because I feel like every time you look at something, you weep, the sentimental, you're ripping, photos in half, this and that. Can't be good. By the way, who's Ben's boss? I just imagine it's Chris Harrison and Neal Lane. I just imagine they're the boss man. It's a mafia. The biggest breakup in Bachelor Nation history. The end of Ben and Lauren's relationship was a big deal, not just within the franchise, but in pop culture at large. Their split was the most Googled celebrity breakup of 2017, and fans were not shy about letting their allegiance be known, even if there really were no teams, just two heartbroken former reality TV stars. Complete strangers regularly came up to me and told me, "I'm with you. I'm Team Ben. She had no right to treat you like that," Ben shared. These people meant well, but frankly, they had no idea what had really happened. They blamed Lauren for everything and were angry with her, which upset me because I cared for Lauren even though we were no longer together. I still do. I only want the best for her and her husband and family. Team Lauren people also weren't shy about coming up to me. Some unloaded on me about all I'd done wrong. That felt pretty terrible, and I felt terrible enough. Years later, even though Ben is now engaged to Jessica Clark and Lauren is expecting her first child with husband Chris Lane, strangers still ask me about her and why we broke up, Ben revealed. Can you imagine? Can you just imagine that extra layer where people think they're entitled to know info about you because you're on a reality TV show? Pretty crazy, yet here I am, recapping it, but the guy's promoting his book, so of course we're going to talk about it. Yeah, very interesting. We do this Team Ben, Team Lauren. When did this start with this team thing? Leave a comment. Who was the first team you rooted for? Was it the Twilight? You were team this, team that, whatever. I don't know. I'm Team Tom Brady. Super Bowl. Go get that extra ring. Speaking of rings, all right, Ben's breakup blues. While their split was mutual and amicable, Ben admitted to avoiding Lauren literally, as Queen Victoria would say, literally, when someone pauses between all the syllables, you're in trouble, literally. When he unexpectedly saw her on the street in New York City just days after their breakup. So he spotted his Lauren after they broke up, and he jumped into a trash can to avoid her. We've all been there. You're in a supermarket, you see somebody, you're like, I guess I never shop at this supermarket anymore. He said, the moment I spotted her, I turned around and started sprinting down the street back the way my boss and I had come. I ran until I came to a cross street, then darted around the corner. While he's still not sure if Lauren ever saw him, Ben shared, what I did know was that 2 days after ending an engagement with a woman I once thought I'd live happily ever after with, I was happier hiding behind a street corner in New York than making eye contact with her in a crosswalk. We'd made the right choice for both of us, but the fallout had yet to start. That's what I love and hate about New York City. You run into people you don't want to. Always wear sunglasses and headphones in New York City, just in case you want to avoid someone. After the news of their breakup, that's actually really good advice if you live in New York. After the news of their breakup was made public, Ben flew to Los Angeles and stayed with a friend for 10 days. I barely moved. Every day I sat in sadness and hurt and confusion, wondering how and why everything had gotten to that point. And what he turned to for comfort also became public fodder. One of the enduring images from that period of my life came when a paparazzi happened to snap a photo of me walking out of a Los Angeles grocery store, a pint of ice cream in one hand and a pint of whiskey in the other, he shared. That photo is a pretty good picture of where I was in my life right then. We've all been there. We've all been there with the whiskey and the ice cream, man. You know what I mean? This is relatable stuff, if you ask me. Love lesson learned. While his breakup with Lauren had a lasting impact on Ben, which fans saw firsthand when he broke down during the Bachelor Winter Games, the Generous Coffee co-founder acknowledged it played a huge role in readying him for his relationship with Jessica. It made me a better man and better prepared me for someone as incredible as Jessica. Only now am I starting to realize that my response to Jessica, my commitment to her, the way that I express love, and the way we work through difficult situations all owe a debt to the lessons I learned before. That's it, folks. If you're not learning lessons from past breakups and other life's hurdles, those lessons will keep repeating themselves in different forms until you learn about it. That's called enlightenment. Google it. I digress. His struggle with addiction. The most surprising revelation in Ben's book is when he revealed he found himself addicted to painkillers after injuring his knee in high school and undergoing 2 surgeries later on. I knew I needed to get off of them, but I found it hard to do when after every surgery I was prescribed them again. In addition, a lot of the people I chose to hang out with at this stage of my life were also taking painkillers. His addiction continued after 3 additional setbacks, including his father becoming sick again, being rejected from one of the top business schools, and getting cheated on by his then girlfriend. I walked in on her making out with another guy, then she dumped me. Looking back at where I was in life, I can't blame her, but at the time that was just one more confirmation of the loser status in life. Ben continued to turn to the pills to numb his shame and failure. Wow. You know, we're very good to have Ben in his current state because a lot of people don't recover from these types of addictions. You know, it's not good out there. His lowest point. During the time he abused painkillers, Ben admitted he started to treat people like objects that existed for a pleasure. And for some time, he didn't feel guilty about doing so until I finally hurt one person too many. I don't want to go into too much detail. Go into detail. It's your book. What are you talking about? I don't want to go into too much detail, but suffice it to say I used a young woman as nothing more than an object for my pleasure. You banged someone you didn't like. Just say it. When it was over, I discarded her. I didn't care about her story or her desire for a relationship that wasn't just physical and lasted longer than one night. I didn't care that I'd hurt her. All I cared about was myself. You know, it's a very interesting revelation. He doesn't have to include the bad moments. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't owe anyone these stories. So for him to share them, it says a lot about the evolution of Ben Higgins. I respect this. Then one morning, everything came to a head for Ben, though he admitted to not remembering many mornings during that 4-month period when he looked in the bathroom mirror and didn't recognize himself. When I made eye contact with myself, I felt like the devil himself was staring back at me. "Oh God," I said out loud, "who is this? This is not the man I ever wanted to be." He recalled, adding that he prayed for the first time in a long time, and it was maybe the most honest prayer he'd ever said, asking, "If you are real, save me from myself." Newly devoted, he was all in. The drastic change from darkness to light made me, well, annoying, Ben admitted. For the next few months, I became the classic, overly passionate, probably more than a little obnoxious, newborn believer. This guy's got depth. You know, you don't want to see depth in this pasty, vanilla bread white guy with his hat on backwards, but this guy has depth. He's got life experience here. Overcoming fear. Before sliding into now fiancee Jessica's DMs in 2018. By the way, amazing. How'd you guys meet? Oh, you know, I slid into her DMs. Can you imagine in 50 years, kids are like, what does sliding into DMs mean? And it's like, don't worry, honey. It was the good old days. It was 2018. Ben admitted he was really nervous about getting into another relationship because his time spent in Bachelor shows had created an unrealistic expectation within me of what romance looks like. No longer having access to the lavish lifestyle in the fantasy world that reality TV created, Ben was concerned he couldn't live up to the on-screen version of himself in real life. I felt like I'd set a certain standard on television, and I was sure she'd be disappointed if dating me outside of that world didn't live up to it, he explained. With guidance from a friend, Ben was able to overcome that fear and ask Jessica out. 2 years later, he proposed. Gotta love a good love story, right, folks? The single life. In the time between ending his engagement to Lauren and dating Jessica, whom he calls the one I have chosen to love for a lifetime. I love the phrasing of that, chosen to love. So many of us go with our heart and we love something and the passion ends. Love is a choice you make with somebody you love. Does that make sense? Ben revealed he didn't really date that much, and he held off on entering a relationship for a very specific reason. I was hesitant to give up the single life I had come to enjoy. It's just that I had grown very comfortable in my own skin, and I didn't want to jeopardize that by falling back into old relationship patterns. I had a habit of becoming a relational chameleon, changing into whatever I thought the one whose heart I was trying to win wanted me to be. The more head over heels in love I was, the more I lost myself. I can relate to that. A lot of us are chameleons. What do you want, honey? You want me to be this? You want me to be that? His wake-up call. If you go back and rewatch the early weeks of that season of The Bachelorette, you'll notice I'm rarely on camera, Ben wrote of his time on Caitlin Bristow's season, admitting he never thought he'd make it past night 1. I took a lot of naps and hung back as much as I could. I tried to laugh at the right jokes told by the right people, and when I had one-on-one time, I tried to make a good enough impression not to stand out as a bad dude. He's just playing defense, guys. We've all been that. You ever do that where you know a girl likes you? You're like, don't get into politics. Don't talk about baseball too much. Don't mention my undying love for Tom Brady. You know what I mean? But his plan, oh boy, nobody loves another man like I love Tom Brady. Get that ring. Neal Lane, Super Bowl ring. But his plan to coast, oh boy, I digress. But his plan to coast until he was eliminated came to a halt when an unnamed producer pulled him aside and said, you know, Ben, I don't like you. Before I could say anything, he said, and do you know why I don't like you? It's because I don't know you. Jeez, that's some depth right there. That prompted Ben to sit down with the producer, big curly hair and beard, decked out in a tie-dye shirt. So, hi, Elon Gale. That's who he's talking about. Elon Gale. For 4 hours and let everything out. I explained to him why I didn't feel worthy of being loved and how I didn't think anyone would really like me if they got to know the real me. By the way, Elon Gale, that's if he told someone he doesn't like them because he doesn't know them, that just feels a little manipulative. Like, I don't know. I digress. I don't know. That admission changed everything for the eventual lead, who stated that the conversation set him free and, dare we say, onto his amazing journey to lasting love. So basically, by being told, I don't know you, so I don't like you, he was like, you know what? I'll show you how to know me. And he spills his guts, and he kind of, gets through that reality TV threshold where he lays it all on the line. Makes sense. These are all excerpts from his book. I get nothing for promoting his book. I just make the video because I cover Bachelor content, but I will post an affiliate link in the description. You can buy the book, and I'll get a portion of it, but it doesn't cost any more to you. It's just, it would make, I'd be an idiot for not doing that. So I'm just letting you guys know. The link's in the description. I don't think, I don't know. Some people like a good book to read. Some of you guys are in the winter snowstorms and you got nothing better to do. Sit back and read this book. It actually, unlike, and no offense to Colton, I have Colton's book over here because I just read the new chapter. No offense to Colton's book, but you read Colton's book and you read it as some sort of like revisionary history because obviously he doesn't discuss any of the alleged stalking. Come on, he basically admitted to it and all that jazz. So you kind of like read this going like, I know this isn't the whole truth. With Ben's book, he shares a lot of like self-reflection just from these excerpts that it makes you kind of think like, oh, maybe I'll learn something about myself while I read what he wrote through his skin. You know what I mean? All right, so he says he wrote the chapter about Lauren because it's part of my story. My life doesn't fully make sense unless you know the entirety of my story. The 31-year-old reality TV personality, he told Us Weekly. So I wrote it and then I sent it over. So a lot of people go, why do you have to include so-and-so in your story? It's like his story is intertwined with Lauren Bushnell's story. You understand? So while she's moved on, she's got a kid, it could be good for her to hear Ben's side because it seems like they both loved each other but weren't meant to be. And I think the more work that we can do to release the burden of guilt from past relationships, the better. Because not only did they break up, they did it under the public eye. Like he said, this was the biggest breakup of 2017. Boy, a lot has changed since then. A lot has changed. Final quote here. Higgins noted that the former couple who split in May 2017 hadn't really spoken before he reached out about his book. She was super gracious, and she read it, and she was like encouraging about it. One, because there is no ill will. She's married and pregnant and life's good. I'm engaged and super happy and life's great, and like there's no resentment or hard feelings there. When I wrote it, it was coming from a place of being healed and fully aware of how it all progressed and how good it all progressed for both of us. And so she was encouraging in it. That's something we don't see in, like I said, other books like Colton Underwood's. I mean, there's no way his ex is discussing the book because there is no healing. It's still messy. A lot of times, I mean, it's really good when these books are written to just see what it's like in hindsight. He's engaged. He's moved on. She's having a child. She's married. They're moving on. But at the same time, their story and their past were combined. I really enjoyed reading these excerpts. Let me know what you guys think. Leave a comment, hit the like button. In a sea of drama that the show creates, the one thing I think that glues us all together is we've all been broken up with. We've all done stupid things. We've all hid from an ex. We've all had these sort of issues in life. So when we see them in others, we realize, oh, just because so-and-so is a good-looking guy and his teeth are straight doesn't mean that he doesn't struggle with his issues too. All right, we'll see you guys next time. Bye, everybody.